So many familiar faces there. As many of you will know, my name is Anne Kerr, and I'm delighted to host such an important subject this evening. You may recognise that I am the immediate past president of the Scottish Women's Institutes, but you may not be aware that I'm also a recently retired dairy farmer in Ayrshire. Tonight's session will discuss a topic relevant to many of us, the mental health and resilience of those living and working on farms and crofts. I'm certain that this will be an insightful and inspiring session. Our speaker today is Claire Dixon, the Community Engagement Specialist for Farmstrong Scotland. Claire has dedicated her career to improving the health and well-being of our farming communities. She brings a wealth of knowledge and a deep understanding of the unique challenges faced by those working in agriculture. There will be time for a question and answer session at the end of the talk, so if you have any questions, Claire will be happy to answer them then. I am confident that Claire's insights will provide valuable strategies and support for us all. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Claire.
Hello. Nice to see you all. Thank you for having me and wishing to join us this week. I did wonder earlier this week if today was the right choice given my lack of voice, but I think that was just down to 4 days of solid chatting, and I can't even blame the drink. I had one Copperberg finally on Monday night. It was a really good show for us. I popped in Sunday to see you guys, so I saw a few of you and looked at all the incredible work that was laid out, and what a location to have as well. Such footfall. We had a great location just behind the grandstand at the top of 15th Avenue, and it couldn't have been better for us, especially as our sort of first time as Farmstrong at the show, which brought its own challenges, but yeah, it was an absolutely brilliant weekend overall. So I'm just going to get kick-started with the presentation. Anne has kindly given me a wee introduction there. I'll do a bit of one myself. So I'm Claire. I stay in Blythebridge in Peeblesshire. I've been a member of both Kirkcard and Broughton Institutes, and only really gave up the Kirkcard one because it clashed in the same night as the Discussion Society, which I'm also a part of. I grew up on the family farm at Blythebridge, Beef and Sheep Farm, Scotland Bank, and then spent 7 years at Novotel in Edinburgh, working in various departments. After being made redundant there, ended up working at RET. It started small and ended up staying there 9 years, which was amazing. I'm sure most of you are familiar with RET, the Royal Highland Education Trust. And little did I know, after a 3-year sort of secondment to running a holiday cottage, I'd end up back at RAS working for Farmstrong. And so here we are. So I suppose the question might be, what is Farmstrong? I'm going to check if this works with me doing this. How do I get to the next screen? Good question.
You got the little arrows on your keyboard, Claire?
Yeah, they're just not doing anything.
Maybe press return, see if that'll work.
There at the moment. Let's have a look. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll see if I can bring it up again. This one.
You could do it like that actually, without having to put it up. If you can just click on each slide.
Can you guys all see that? Okay.
Yep.
It's not letting me move it either.
Could you click on your second slide just as an example? Oh, there you go.
Fingers crossed. Right. So what is Farmstrong? Farmstrong is for the well-being of farmers, crofters, and those in the rural areas. We are looking for people to share stories, tips, and advice on how best to keep your well-being boosted and stay in that positive place. We know everyone has their up and down days. However, we want people to sort of do their best to stay in that positive place of well-being. We'll go into that in a wee bit later. Alongside this, there resources that are expert-led that we're designing and creating, and I've got a few to show you in a wee bit. And we also want to look at the key points that were raised in the research that we ran in 2021, such as stress and fatigue. Plus, by planning our own events, we can get people to get off farm, which was another key point raised during our research, and a signpost as well to other events that are on, whether it's events we're working in collaboration with others or other events that are on, such things with the SWI. So I hope that sort of covers a base of what Farmstrong actually is. And I'll come back to that picture in a little while later. So back in 2018, some of you may have attended the Doug Avery tour. This was a New Zealander who came across to Scotland and spoke to over 2,000 people, everywhere from Kelso, Lanark, all the way up to Orkney. And he was sharing his story on adversity and how he'd come through the adversity he'd faced in New Zealand due to the droughts, etc. And although he's never got over it, how he's got through it and the resilience he's built up and the well-being that he was sharing. This well-being was still quite new in 2018, but a group of people thought we want to keep this conversation in agriculture since it started. And I don't know about you, but in the following months after the Doug Avery tour, so many people kept referencing various things from his talks, such as the geese analogy. So this group, let's call them the steering group, they got a few others involved to try to work out how best to take this forward. So they went back to Doug and said, what can we do? He said, had you heard of Farmstrong New Zealand? They hadn't. So they went to speak to Farmstrong New Zealand, and Gerard there was more than happy to help us emulate it here. Of course, we needed help. So funding was required. So here's just a picture of some of our supporters. Our three main founding funders are along the top there. So Movember, many of you may have friends and family who've grown a moustache in November for Movember. And although it's a men's health charity, we have been very fortunate in securing match funding of up to 350,000 from them. To note, they are behind the one in New Zealand as well, which is now 10 years old. So they know how it works, and fingers crossed we're doing well here. RAS has also been a founding funder, as well as the NFU Mutual Charitable Trust. And all the other logos you can see there are just some of the supporters behind us, whether it's been gift in kind, direct funds, or being a supporter, such as the Scottish Farmer is our media partner for the year. So after managing to get some funding, we did some research. I mentioned this earlier. So this took part in 2021 alongside SRUC. Just under 600 farmers and crofters took part, and there were some key elements came out of that. 3 of these were: those who took part wanted to know how to manage tiredness and fatigue. They wanted more information on getting the life-work balance, and notice it's like life-work, not work-life balance, and getting time off farm, and then how to stop worrying about work and managing stress. But if you flip them round, if you manage to get some more time off farm, you're going to stop worrying and be less stressed, and then hopefully your fatigue will release as well. So why is Farmstrong more important than ever? I'm sure you're all aware of all the changes that are going on. We're in the middle of, or coming up to an election. Goodness knows what that's going to host for us in the future. But there's so much change ahead there. We also know that everyone's busy. We had a dreadful winter into spring, and I'll come more into that a bit later. And that's why I think the Highland Show, we talked about everyone connecting the Highland Show and a few other events prior to the show. There might have been competitions going on, there might have been a bit of business going on. However, I think everyone was truly there for the social. They just needed to sort of release that. So another question, what is well-being? So we look at it on the wellness scale. I hope you can see all that. The bit that might be missing because of some of the pictures is obviously number 5. So we work in the positive place, and that's what I've been trying to say. Keeping in that positive mind frame of 0 to 5. As I said, we all have our up and down days. So we might go down to maybe 0 or 1 every so often. We're not at 5 all the time. We can't possibly be. But as long as you remain in that positive space, that's the main thing. However, should you dip into the minuses, that's where if you would come to us, we would signpost you on. So on the back of our leaflets, we have a small area of signposting here with telephone numbers. So we would ask that people consider to phone their GP, the Samaritans, RSABI, Breathing Space. There are so many other organisations out there for those who are reaching out for help. Whereas we want to just keep you from needing the help. And well-being, it's your physical well-being as well as the mental, emotional and social. The way we sort of often get through to those in the rural community who maybe aren't quite there with well-being yet is by using this scale, but also noting that if they have better well-being, they're going to make better business decisions. They're going to have that clearer head and the business will thrive better. Also, we've noted that better well-being sees a true reduction in farm accidents and injuries. From New Zealand, now they have the equivalent of their NFU Mutual behind them, which is FGN, and they conducted a survey and they saw in 2022 that there was a 23% reduction in accidents on farm that were directly attributed to Farmstrong Scotland. That's nearly a quarter less accidents just because people were thinking about what they were doing before doing it, or having a moment if they think, hang on, my brain's a bit busy, I'm not going to jump in that tractor and do something, I'm going to just let it go first. So this is just a sentence that I hope makes sense to you all. Farmstrong encourages farmers and crofters to make time for wellness so they don't have to make time for illness. And one of our slogans is live well to farm and croft well. I'm sure that resonates with all of you. Quite often I'll just, if I'm in the middle of a sort of in-person presentation, I'll just leave that up and let people think about it for a while. It really does sort of make you think. And that's, you know, when you talk about not having to make time for illness, that could be mental, it could be physical, it could be that social or emotional, as we mentioned before. So I'm hoping you were all sent a copy of this leaflet, your Wellbeing Bank account, via email when you signed up to Eventbrite. I'd like to run through this with you just now. If you don't have it to hand or don't have it on your computer, if you have a pen or paper handy, make note or make a mental note. So what I want you to think about is your investments. What do you invest in your bank account, in your Wellbeing Bank account with? This is to be a bit of an interactive session. So if any of you want to unmute and pitch in, please do. If you had seen this, you would have seen that investments could be, actually, as we've mentioned, taking that time off farm, chatting, going for a walk, going to the SWI meetings or learning something new at an SWI gathering. Perhaps it was the show. For me, it's time with the family, and sometimes that's also one of my withdrawals. And also baking, but then unfortunately I also eat it. So have a wee think about your investments. What do you all do personally? I think there's maybe 20 odd of you in this chat. Does anyone want to come forward with what they do?
I like to try and do a wee bit of mindfulness. I've kind of got a wee corner in this office here that I've got a bit of space, and I would like to say I would like to try and do sort of 10 minutes a day, but there's usually always something else to be done. So it's there. I've got the candles, I've got the music, I've got everything. It's just I need to make more time to spend a bit more time in it. But we're not always very good at it.
No, thank you, Linda. That's great. Yeah. Does anyone else do mindfulness?
No. I try to meet a friend for coffee regularly, just to get a change of scenery and view on life.
So, I'm meeting a friend for coffee, but that's obviously getting out somewhere else, trying a new place. And equally, if time is of the essence, you know, a phone call, you know, just phoning that friend, picking up the phone to a friend is just as good. I know how delighted I feel when I get a wee text even saying, you know, how are you? What are you up to? Catherine?
Yeah, without doubt, catching up with people, whether it's telephone or just because my nieces are overseas, just the delight at seeing life through their eyes. And my aim is, and I'm ahead of myself, but it's to read at least one book a week because that makes me sit down. You know, I'm not talking about a farming accounts. I'm talking about, you know, interesting reading. Yeah, I mean, I know we do lots of reading online because of sitting at computers, but actually physically sitting with a book or two a week, because I feel it just makes me switch off from all these delightful returns that are sent to us.
Escapism.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And just to note on that book, if you're on our socials, if you have a look, we have, or on our website, we started a book library. So if you wanted to send in any books that you're reading, Catherine, if you email, I'll put up the email later, hello@farmstrongscotland.org.uk, we can note down your book and add it to our list, see what other peers are reading as well. And in fact, I've just had an email just in the last, maybe before I came on here, from the Scottish Book Trust, with a list of 25 must-reads for the summer. So have a look at the Scottish Book Trust as well.
Yeah. Listening to podcasts is quite good as well.
Have you got any favourites, Anne?
Yeah, I quite enjoy the sheep game, actually.
Excellent,
Yeah.
yes.
Quite entertaining, usually.
Have you had any favourites of his?
Well, I thought the one with Alan Laidlaw was quite interesting, about the background to the Highland Show. Just what goes on behind the scenes. It was really quite fascinating. And he usually has some quite interesting, well, he's had lawyers and farm advisors. You usually pick up something useful.
Yeah, definitely learning through the podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. And music too is quite, listening to your favourite songs on the radio or CD or whatever.
I'll come on to it in a bit, but we also have a playlist on Spotify.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So no, that's great. Anyone else want to share anything before we go on to the withdrawals? I think from the research that was done, one of the ones we often laugh about is that a lot of the farmers, out of those 600, cycle, and we thought farmers hated cyclists. It's very interesting to see, and share the stories. Everyone from their wild swimming to the list of things you've mentioned is fantastic, and it's great to know that once you share these, someone else might be on par with what you do or want to give it a go and be in touch, and then that's a new connection, and maybe going out and doing something different with someone new, which is great. So on to the withdrawals. Would anyone like to share what their withdrawals are?
Dare we say committee meetings?
Not being able to say no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I know that one, Anne.
Too busy, too busy, too busy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just noting these down because they're always great to hear. Anyone else got anything? Did anyone agree with some of the things that were on the bank account postcard? So on there, things that can make you feel drained would be stress, but then look into what's causing the stress. Lack of exercise, one for me. Too much time on the socials. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that one too.
Yeah.
Not getting enough sleep.
Sleep. We also found that when we are speaking to people, and we've done a few group sessions, for instance, we were at the FAS Connect event that was at Murrayfield at the end of January, and then also the FAS Women in Agriculture event at the end of February. And out of both those groups, we found that many people might have a job out with the farm. So whether they're an accountant or a bookkeeper or working with rate or a lawyer, for example. So their release was actually on the farm. Their release was actually being in amongst the cows instead of that causing them their stress, which was a nice way to look at it, actually. We find that quite interesting. As I mentioned before, families were definitely going both boats there. Others found that they might coach sport, but their son or daughter is also in that sport. So that adds another headache to it, even though they're giving of the sport and coaching to the sport is what they do for their health. So it's just a nice way to look at it in your Wellbeing bank account. And we really push this sort of early spring, sort of pre-lambing, pre-calving. So we want to make sure that people invest in their bank account of Wellbeing, so that when they're up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get a lamb to soak, or they're sitting on top of a very blustery hill waiting on a cow calving on top of a bike, they've got some reserves to use of their well-being there. And one of you mentioned there, to make a well-being pledge, at the bottom of this card is a blank space. If you can fill that out, whether you do it online and print it out, or just make a note of it somewhere and pin it on your fridge, put it on your dressing table, wherever you're going to note, and make sure you complete that pledge. Give yourself a time frame. We find that if you write something down, you're more likely to do it, especially if it's right there in front of you. Does anyone want to share any pledges they're thinking about making? Or we can come back to that at the end of the session. No, that's fine. Right, let's head on. So this is that was the sort of second resource we released. The first resource was the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. So you may have seen our leaflet. This is one that also should have got sent round. If anyone would like any of these resources, by the way, just shout and I can post them up to you, or you can easily send it by email, or if you've got events, we can get some to you for them as well. So our 5 Ways to Wellbeing. So there they are on screen as well. Connect, take notice, give, keep learning, and be active. So again, I'd like to have a think. When did you last do one of these? Excluding tonight, because hopefully tonight you're connecting and you're learning. So hands up again, please. Did anyone volunteer at the show?
Yes, we did a lot of talking last week. It was good. It was good. But it's good to feel connected to people, as you say.
Absolutely. As I said before, that's definitely one of the main things, and that's why it's there first. Connect. Catherine?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think just being part of the SWI, we probably do all of these things quite naturally. I'm not saying we get it back like we do, but I think we're always going to have some of us that are the people that pick up the telephone and ask how people are or notice things. So I think you're always going to get leaders and followers. But just a simple thing about that gives you joy. We have one of our members who's 101. Very well, and I just took it in my head this morning. I thought I'm just going to phone her because I'm not going to see her this month because we don't have a meeting. I heard everything from the blips to what she was given as a child, to keep her healthy, right through to what she thinks of the election. And at the end of it, she said to me, "You've made my day," because it was somebody to speak to or listen to. And I said, I just call her Mrs. Cameron, I didn't call her first name. I said, "Mrs. Cameron, you've actually made my day." So maybe there's a bit of that, but it's only half an hour that they actually both, but that's only because of the SWI.
Absolutely. And I think for myself, having spent 15 years in young farmers, I definitely felt that, like the SWI, these 5 Ways to Wellbeing tick all those boxes too. We did find that speaking to a lot of people, it's, for me as well, turning 30 was fine. Being too old for young farmers, well, that was something else. That had been 15 years of committees, love them or loathe them, 15 years of events, probably something on at least every week, if not every fortnight, concerts, rehearsals, sport, though admittedly, if someone asked me to play hockey, I knew they'd asked everyone else. But we found that, and that it's definitely like an age thing. And then on the backside of that, for those who might retire out of farming, and you just mentioned it, sometimes we find people there are a bit of a loss as to what they can go and do. And so it's trying to think about what we can put in place for everyone. My top tips on coming out young farmers was join your local show society, did that. Join your discussion society, did that. Join your local AmJam groups, did that. It's what's available to you, what's got your interests, and then also maybe the people you're coming out of these things with as well. Has anyone else been through this and want to share what they've gone on to do? You've come off mute.
Yeah, I I seem to find something else to move on to every time. Yeah, well, after Young Farmers, it was the local cattle show and the playgroup committee, and yeah, parent council, just one thing after another. SWI, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So I think the nice thing about SWI as well is that it continues a lot of the things you've done in Young Farmers if you've been a part of it. So, you know, the crafting, some of the drama that goes on, the sport even, with your Rural Olympics, etc. And even, you know, your conferences. Anne Hutchison, did you want to say something there?
Do you hear me? Or am I muted?
I can hear you, Anne.
You can hear me. All right. I was going to say at the beginning that, like you, my release is baking. If I'm bored or fed up with doing what I'm doing, I go and bake. That's my release there. But like you, I eat it. It's a bit of a disadvantage. I'm interested to hear what people do after they retire from farming. It fills me with dread because of an age where I probably should retire, but can't think to do it.
Absolutely. It's something we're certainly looking at. We're also looking at an initiative that's happening in Northern Ireland. It's called Plough On. It's for men. However, they decided it was for men because they knew there was the WI over there for women. But it's something that I know RSABI are looking at, we've been looking at, and trying to sort of see if we can come up with something to keep people going. But at the same time, we've also been doing our own events that hopefully people can get out to. And then sort of longer term, I say longer term, we'd like to get something done by the end of this year, is in the same way that RET, for example, has their initiatives in each area. We'd like to see if we can get Farmstrong initiatives by way of having followers, champions and ambassadors who might then put on events in their area, knowing what works well. So what works in our area and in Peeblesshire, you know, might not work well in Dingwall, etc. So it's just seeing what's going to work. And if anyone has any suggestions, more than happy to chat with you later. My email address was at the beginning of the slides. I can share that again. Or Anne might kindly share around my email with all the details in my signature at some point to everyone who's been on the call. I might give a caveat here that Anne's my husband's auntie. So I've had some of her baking and I can say it's also very good.
Well, one of my other releases is to phone a sister. That's one of the things I do.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's nice to know that picking up the phone is something that's still done. And you know, whether it's your sister, your 101-year-old member, your neighbour down the street, it's great to know. Any more comments on 5 ways to wellbeing just now? Move to the next one. I'm just sort of keeping in mind time there. So other resources we've got beyond our Wellbeing Bank account and Farmstrong 5 Ways to Wellbeing. We mentioned podcasts earlier. So we've launched our podcast. We've got 2 episodes so far, with a few more coming. I believe some have been recorded. Hopefully one will be out next month. But the first one was with our chairperson, John Scott. And the second one was a dairy farmer, Rory Christie. So John is from up in Tain and Rory Christie's down the southwest, Dumfries and Galloway. So, you know, 2 very sort of different aspects there, but both interesting. And they're both just half an hour. Because I know sometimes, for instance, we're discussing the sheep came and fed by farmers, and their podcasts are sort of an hour and a half. So these are just sort of quick snippets. And again, these are something that you can just listen to. Maybe you think, oh, hang on, I need to wait on the cookies baking, or that cow's still calving. I'm going to quickly pop it on and have a listen. Spotify, we mentioned the playlist. If you guys have a Spotify or download it, you can also just search Farmstrong and you'll find our playlist. Now, this was created during the month of April when it was supposed to be our Be Active month. we thought it would be really good to keep farmers active. We know how fit you actually have to be in order to do the lambing, do the calving. But with the weather that ensued, we thought we can't ask our farmers to do any more than they're doing. So we thought, what can we do to give them a bit of joy? So the suggestion was to create the playlist. So farmers and crofters and those who follow us on the socials sent in their music suggestions in their throws. There's about 120 there now, I think, maybe even more. We definitely got a few more suggestions at the Highland Show. And it's a very eclectic mix of music. There's a lot of country on there, but there's everything from like last week's #1 right through to some older songs as well. And if you guys have any suggestions, something that means something to you or something that makes you smile, please do send it on, much like the book list suggestion as well. I sometimes have it on just in the background while I'm working from home. And sometimes if you're busy at something, you know, the music's there, but you're sort of absent-mindedly listening to it, then suddenly a song will come on that just makes you smile, makes you get up and dance, or gives you a memory about something. And then sometimes you wonder, well, who sent this song in? Because this is one of my favorites too. We also, I'll go on to it when we come to the show, but we had a silent disco at our Highland Show stand, which went down quite well with old and young. And people were listening to it, choosing their songs on the iPads and out of the Spotify playlist. And it was great to see people sort of, you know, some people were sitting down, but their feet were tapping. I myself, there are videos of me doing both Gangnam Style and the Macarena. But of course, you would know those dances without having to hear the music, just because they're so significant. Thankfully, I think only one of them has so far made it onto the socials. So other resources, so we discussed stress. This is another resource that I might add has been gone over by the experts and is actually went down well at the show as well. We took this to our first farm walk, which I'll come on to later. And the farmer there really thought this was really useful, as did many of his peers who were there in attendance. So it gives you tips on managing stress and also the signs to look for there. It can be downloaded from our website, but as well, if you'd like any of them, please do just shout and we'll get a handful over to you. So this is Jock Gibson. Not only is he a farmer and butcher up in Elgin, he is on his Nuffields just now. He's been back about a month from his tours of Australia, Japan, etc. And he is one of our board members. So this is a quote he'd written down for us. So our industry is changing, and whilst it's important our businesses evolve, we mustn't forget our most important asset, ourselves, and that starts with our well-being. Small changes can make a big difference, so find out what works for you. Now, from the New Zealand aspect, they continue that further. They tell us to find out what works for you and lock it in. So a habit takes about 60 days to form. So if maybe like me, you're not as active, you think, right, I really need to do something. What can I do? So let's get out walking. If you go for a walk for 10 minutes, then you've got 10 minutes to walk back. Suddenly that's a 20-minute walk. You might do it on your own. You might take your phone and listen to one of the podcasts or the Spotify playlist, or you might leave your phone at home and just try a bit of mindfulness. That walk might then suddenly end up being 30 minutes one way, therefore 30 minutes back. So suddenly you're out walking for an hour. And if you can create that habit over the course of 60 days, you'll have locked it in. One of the other New Zealanders who had been over giving a tour with us, Mark Gascoigne, and we also did a webinar with him earlier this year, he does cold showers. So again, it took him sort of 60 days to get it locked in, and he might have started with 30 seconds of a cold shower. However, he's now up to 2 minutes, and he just stands, and in those 2 minutes, it's his moment of calm. You can't really think of much else while you're under a cold shower. However, as a caveat, as I said, he's in New Zealand. He also does wild water swimming. When he came here and went wild water swimming with one of our story sharers, Hazel, he discovered the Scottish water is a lot colder than that in New Zealand. And that goes for the sea and the shower. So what have we been up to? Myself, I've been in post since October. Alex, our programme director, in November, and our programme administrator, Anna, since February. And we also have a teammate, Katie, who's in with us, helping us with events over this summer. Katie also did a dissertation, which she's just finished, in stress and farming based on farmers in the Southwest. And she's just got in to do her master's. So she's being a great asset to us just now. Since then, we've done many events, been at many conferences, spoken to other groups like this, spoken to feed societies, spoken to show committee societies. And if you guys have anything you want us to be at, please just give us a shout and we'll see if we can do it. So whether it be myself, one of the team, or even one of the board, we're all happy to keep raising the profile of who and what Farmstrong are and Wellbeing. So for June, the Cumbershore Cup. Not sure who's aware of this. This is a huge event this year held in Caithness, so it goes alternately to Caithness and Orkney, really in memory of a farmer who tragically died during COVID. However, although it's a memorial to him, it's more about the getting together of the community. It's that connection. Again, that number one, 5 ways to wellbeing, the connection. The rugby is a game between those of later years, I think it's 35 plus, between Caithness and Orkney, and that main game is at 3 o'clock on the Saturday. However, on the Friday, there was a 4-stop distillery tour for the Orcadians who came down and those who were willing to go along. That was then followed by a supper at night, and then the following day, there was, I believe, 2 farm visits before the event started at noon with a women's sevens game, and there were teams from all over Scotland there, as well as a farmer's market type vibe, and stallholders, of which my boss Alex was up there as we were one of the beneficiaries of the funds raised. The rugby game, of course, then occurred at 3 o'clock, and that just went through the night with the bar. So really a true social, and you know, it helps to know why you're there, keeping the memory of Alec alive. However, as I said, it goes back to being the social, keeping everyone together and connecting. We've also been at some QMS monitor farm meetings. So you might notice this is a sauna at this one. Stuart McNichol, who has Castleton Farm just south of North Berwick, also has a cafe Drift, which is made up of shipping containers right on the cliffs at North Berwick, overlooking the Bash Rock. I've been a couple of times. Very nice, great views, great food and coffee. However, off the back of one of our newsletters, he thought, hang on, how can I help? So this sauna he bought last year at the Highland Show. I'm sorry, I'm just checking in on time here. And he thought, what can I do with the sauna? So currently the sauna regularly sits in his shed where he goes in it with his friends sometimes, and it overlooks his New Holland forager. However, for our event, which we held a farmer's sauna night, he brought it into the car park at Drift. So we had these fantastic views over the Bash Rock. Our first event was on the 29th of February, so we leapt into the sauna. There was about 10, 12 of us there. We gave a chat on Farmstrong. We had goes in the sauna. Of course, you can only fit so many people in the sauna. And I might add, we did have costumes on. The Scandinavians might have considered that sacrilege. But other than that, it would have been a bit weird going into the sauna with your CEO, Alan Laidlaw. However, it was a great night. Once you were in the sauna, everyone's just equal. And the chat just flowed as if you were just sitting in a cafe having a coffee. But the well-being of saunas is testament to the Scandinavians. I think in those Nordic countries, there's approximately 1 sauna to every 3 people, which is pretty much 1 in every household. I've read that even some people give birth in it. Not for me. However, this led to us having a second sauna night at the end of April. We thought farmers and those in the rural area were going to be in need of a respite after the spring we'd had. And again, another great night was had back at Drift. This time I didn't go in the sauna, but let others use it and utilise the wellbeing aspect of that. However, going back to the beginning of that, Stuart is also one of the monitor farms for the year. And Alex was along at that to showcase what Farmstrong can do as part of the workshops that were ran. There we are at Scotch Sheep. I don't know if any of you were at Scotch Sheep. It looked lovely, but boy, it was Baltic. Being on top of a hill in the back of Beyond at Dunbar, we had our beanie hats, which we'd also had an air show, and at air show it was boiling. The beanie hats didn't go anywhere. However, at Scotch Sheep, they were literally flying off the shelf, both by people taking them and requiring them, but also they were literally flying off the shelf. We were at the end of a shed in a very windy spot. But it was great to see so many people wearing them in all the posts that came out after Scotch Sheep. We also ran a couple of seminars at Scotch Sheep. So that picture is of us just post-seminar with John Scott there, our chairman, Alan Laidlaw, who's on our board, myself and Alex Ritchie. Then we ran the first of our farm walk and talk series. This we held over at Scalpsy Farm in Butte. As you often know in farming, it's who you know. So that's my brother-in-law to the far left of the picture there, Ian. And so Ian, would you host me a wee farm visit? So as you can see, we got a cracking day. Their farm is right on the beach, and this is us round at one of their other parts, looking at the cattle there, and you can see right over to Goatfell there on Arran. It was a lovely day, lots of great chat. We started with a meal in the Kingarth, which is a pub on the island, and went on to the farm. Ian gave some chat about what he does, how he runs his farm and the enterprises. They also have some glamping pods there. And Lisa, his fiance, also breeds and trains sheepdogs. So it was a cracking start to our farm walk and talk series. I'll come on to that in a bit. And Tad, we also had a speaker, Michael Blanche, talking about podcasts. He also did podcasts. He's called the Pasture Pod. He talks a lot about grass, but he also has a really interesting talk on time, if any of you want to listen to that. Of course, the Royal Highland Show. So there's the team, myself, Katie, Gerard from New Zealand was over for the show. He's still over, although I believe he's in Finland this week. Anna and Alex, all donning some of our merch for the show there, our fantastic sunglasses. They were also flying off the shelves as long as people did some of the planking challenge. You can see the planking going on there, hopefully in the bottom corner. It ended up being won in the end late on Sunday evening, with 11 minutes of planking by an 8-year-old who's actually quite local to me, Isla Dick, from Hameldine Farm. And she just bet a 22-year-old athlete who was at 8 minutes. I didn't even try. You can see there, we ran a reception. In essence, we were one at the Highland Show. Farmstrong was officially launched at last year's show. And it was great to see just how far we've come in a year, with staff involved, events happening, and so much more in the pipeline. As I mentioned, we also had the silent disco. So that's also some of my neighbours there. And on the left is Jack Harrison, who has just been selected for the SRU squad to head to the Americas tour. So we actually have a lot going on with rugby people who are from farming backgrounds, as there's so much correlation between well-being and farming and rugby. So what's ahead for Farmstrong? We have the Farm Walk and Talk series. Our next one's down at Poldine Farm at Moffat, thanks to the Davidson family, on the 17th of July. If any of you are tech savvy, you can scan that QR code if you've got a computer screen and a separate phone handy, or you can go onto our website and register there. They are free. They're kindly sponsored by the NFU Mutual Charitable Trust. So there's a meal to be had, there's chat. As we say, there's a farm walk, so you're going to learn something. And we're also going to Westerbreaky, which is at our growth on the 23rd of July with Amy Geddes. On the 23rd of August, we're heading up to Cluny Farm, which is at Forest with the Newlandses. We're in talks with Croft on Uist, that's looking like September, and possibly one in Glencoe as well. So there's going to be 6 in this series, but beyond that, if you know of anyone that'd be willing to host a farm walk for us, please put them in touch if you think that's something your area would be up for. Beyond our farm walks, we're doing some fundraising events. I don't know if you can make out that picture, but that person is doing what it says underneath. They are zip sliding the Clyde. So we have 5 places available for any volunteers who are willing to take the leap 100 feet up for an 1,000 feet long zip slide across the Clyde between the Riverside Museum and the SECC. That's on the 15th of September. We've got definitely 2 signed up. 3, 4 maybe, so 1 or 2 places available if anyone is either willing or knows someone who is a bit of a daredevil and willing to raise some funds for us. Please get in touch if you have any volunteers for that. But alongside FAS, the Farm Advisory Service, we're going to be running some autumn panel night sessions. We've just had the funding approved for that, and we're just sort of getting started on that now that the show is over. We will be creating more tools and resources, again, based on the research, and there'll be further research taking place because the last lot of research was from 2021 and a lot has changed since then. And of course, we're going to continue sharing our storage. So Hazel Moss, I don't know if you can see her there. For me, she's hidden beside your wonderful faces. Hazel Moss, as I mentioned before, she was our wild swimmer up in Orkney. She was our first story that went into the Scottish Farmer in December and got a lot of great feedback off that. Other stories have been, you might see behind me, we've got Lynn Brett Croft gave a story. We've had Neil Thompson. all sharing what they do. Not all of them have to have a story as to why they do it. Some people just would like to share what they do to keep well, in some of those 5 ways to well-being. So how can you support Farmstrong? First and foremost, think about your own well-being. Secondly, spread the word. So it's great to be here talking to you guys. If you'd like me to come along to any of your rurals or any other events you have happening, please just shout. More than happy to discuss that with you. Follow us on our socials and share away, please. Anything that takes your fancy. Tracy Rowan, who you can just see there, and some of you may know her from This Farming Life, or she's also the NFUS advisor and dairy farmer. And she shared her story about how she got into weightlifting. She actually made the front page of the Sunday Post on Sunday of the Highland Show there, and because they picked up the story as well. So it's amazing where Farmstrong can take you. Of course, you can also sign up to our Farmstrong Scotland newsletter. Just go onto our website, you'll see the subscribe button and just pop in your email address. It's roughly once a month and maybe a second one if there's anything happening. And like I said about volunteering to do our zip slide the Clyde, you can fundraise or donate to Farmstrong Scotland. So that's hopefully me. I hope I've covered everything. And as I say, all we're doing is to hope that everyone lives well to farm and croft well, but happy to try and take any questions. And if there are answers I don't know, I will get back to you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Claire. A very interesting and wide-reaching organisation that has come to light just in a year, which shows there's a great need for it altogether. Does anyone have any questions for Claire? No?
I don't have a question, Claire, but I do have a husband who has a cheque ready to come to you at some point. So we'll need to coordinate that. They raised money at the local hard supper and it was to go to Farmstrong. So
super. Thank you. Yes, be in touch, Anne.
yeah.
I'm sure there will be a lot of other fundraisers.
It was amazing. We actually had a track. There's often these tractor runs at Christmas, you know, where they're all lights blazing, etc., and they're all dressed up. One happened up north round Dingwall and Inverross, a mixture of the Rotaries and the young farmers up there. And they discussed Farmstrong way back last year. So it was so humbling to know that at some point last year, people have been sat around a committee table and Farmstrong was mentioned. And they thought, yeah, let's do this for Farmstrong. So it's so nice to know that people are willing to donate. And I think it was shared amongst others, but we got a lovely donation from them. And like I say, it's just the fact people are discussing us, which is the whole point of Farmstrong and Wellbeing.
And you obviously refer people to other organisations if they get beyond the point that they're feeling when they feel their well-being is suffering.
Depleting, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're in regular chats with the RSABI, also with the young farmers, because obviously they've got the Are You OK campaign and obviously their New Respect campaign as well. So very much working alongside them just to see what everyone's doing, what everyone's up to, how we can collaborate on events, and looking for new people to collaborate with as well.
Well, I'm sure you'll find plenty of interest in all the rural areas throughout Scotland, because
yeah, we can certainly help promote that out there, Claire. I've just took some notes on quite a few things actually, so we can certainly help from our point of view, and regularly as well. We can just put, you know, social media posts up every now and again, maybe at key points in the year when you think, you know, a bit of that stress is going to happen. So yeah, happy to promote that all the time.
It's also this week's very apt for having this because it's National Wellbeing, World Wellbeing Week as well.
Yeah. So if no one has any questions, I presume we just wind up now. And thank you very much.
Can I ask it? Am I muted or am I speaking?
No, we can hear you, Anne.
You can hear me. Right. It was just I was going to bring to your notice that on Saturday there is a huge tractor run in aid of CJD. A local gentleman has contracted CJD and is very, very ill. and the young farmers of Biggar have set up this tractor run, and I think at the moment they have about 200 vehicles going to be touring the area. It's just to bring it to your notice. It's 11 o'clock at Biggar Showground and round and about. Thank you.
Super, thank you, Anne.
Excellent.
I'm hoping to go along with my boys.
This will be quite a sight to see that number going out on the roads.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much, Claire, for coming along and giving us such a good insight into what is going on with Farmstrong and all the events that you're holding to help people in rural communities connect together and keep their well-being. Just talking makes all the difference. And I think it's very important that everyone remembers that there's always someone out there to listen. So thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to thank you again all for having me, and hopefully we've finished up in a nice time. You can get the cup of tea on before you go and watch Landward at the show.
Yeah, Landward's on tonight.
See who you can spot Farmstrong, SWI, your friends and family.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.